All right, and welcome everyone. Who says that November is a slow time for game announcements and news from the video game world? Xbox is here to prove them wrong. Microsoft had their event this past weekend down in Mexico City, the X018, or I'm not quite sure the best way to say that, but that is going to give us plenty to talk about here on the E2KG network for enough to keep going. Episode number 70. Gentlemen, can you believe it? 70 episodes here on the E2KG network. And that is even with our convoluted numbering scheme of when we split off and had our Avengers West Coast and East Coast podcasts. So, joining me tonight,
and
we
I'm
have
and I'm not I'm not
the
I'm
ever
not you know,
studious, ever bearded Osiris Prime. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Wow. I like the comic book reference in there. Thank you.
All right. Well, we could come over to our Hawkeye or maybe our Iron Man in his alternative gear when he moved out to the West Coast with a glass of keys, Stamos.
wow.
Whew.
That's a big throwback. Are you calling out the Iron Man armor with the white triangle on the chest and
I
the
I
white
I
faceplate?
am.
Wow.
I am. Yes, I am. We're going all the way back West Coast Avengers style. So
And I was gonna say not new Hawkeye, not dude bro Hawkeye. I hope
no,
so. What we're calling it.
this is back where right, and we had Wonder Man back on the
Ah,
Avengers West Coast.
yeah, absolutely
Yep.
love Wonder Man. Yeah, West Coast Avengers, incidentally, back in publication.
Yes, it
Oh,
is,
nice.
and be reviewing relatively well from what I've read. So,
Yeah. And yeah,
all right, but that is
and I'm not absolutely certain that I believe that it's episode number 70 because as I look back, I'm not absolutely certain that we have it misnumbered somewhere, but it's
I'm
fine.
pretty sure we did.
It's
it seems very possible. Well,
Numerous times.
so next week when we hit number 82, it'll be great. We'll just keep coming back around. So you know what? If Microsoft can come up with crazy numbering schemes for their events, and you know we've got plenty of other things that we can flub our way through. The numbering is not important, gentlemen. What is important is that we're here tonight to dive deep into some of that news, to talk a little bit about it, and to continue to bring each other and our listeners plenty to engage with during this busy, hectic time of the holiday release schedule. So we've got plenty of games coming out. We still got more games coming out in these coming weeks here as well. We've got things like Fallout 76 coming this week, Pokemon Let's Go, and then next week we get Battlefield 5. And still, we've got around the corner a little game that Osiris Prime is excited for with Just Cause 4. So, but all of that and more coming up to you, the listener, before we get to our end of the year specials in December. So there's plenty to keep us going here on the E2KG network. So tonight, gentlemen, we had lots of good, satisfying news from the Microsoft event. And this is almost like a mini E3, right? This is Microsoft's fan showcase. PlayStation opted not to do a PlayStation lifestyle event or whatever it was called this year, in part because
so so
one,
so they're not doing PlayStation Experience in December.
they are not doing
Okay.
a PlayStation experience in December.
Huh. What?
I was gonna be a little glib and say in part because I don't know that they have a lot to talk about.
I
But
can we pause there for a second? I know it's a very early hijack, but like the is this this arrogance again? Because I feel like it is. Like we're gonna talk about a story about like stuff that's on sale. I think maybe for Black Friday, or maybe that will just be something we bring up. And when you look at what Xbox has on sale, it feels like they're really trying. And when you look at what PlayStation has on sale, it feels like it's very like whatever. Sorry.
no, right? I think you could make a point. Like, so let's go ahead and jump into that, right? We've got lots of Black Friday leaks as well in terms of things that have kind of informally leaked, but we've got some official sale announcements as well. And so I'm going to kick it back over to you, Agasicles, but I'll frame it by saying I think the only console sale on the Sony end this year is a 199 bundle, which is a PS4 Slim, no markings, anything else, just a plain one with a pack in of Spider Man. So now, Spider Man, great fall game. It's going to be up there, one of my games I've had the most fun with this year. But is that, I mean, they've had 199 bundles before with PlayStation 4, but so what is Xbox bringing to the table in terms of its sales, I suppose?
Well, I don't know all the sales, quite honestly. The big one is that the price of the Xbox One Scorpio has been dropped to $399, which, you know, you, I mean, I guess when I think about the Xbox One Scorpio pricing from last year, which was disappointing, um, but I don't think it was Microsoft saying you need this console and you must be willing to pay $500 for it. I think it was honestly, I think Microsoft has a track record, at least in the hardware divisions, of really walking the line of what do we need profit margin to be and what is the cost and yada yada yada, and really, in my opinion, giving gamers in particular a fair break. So I don't feel like the price of the Xbox One X Scorpio was price gouging. Sony, on the other hand, as a corporation across multiple divisions, has a history of, I think, driving ridiculously high profit margins, almost to, I mean, not quite approaching Apple kind of levels, but definitely more so towards that end of the spectrum than kind of a fair and honest price. So when you look at what they have on sale, I think Microsoft getting the price of the Scorpio down is, and I don't even know that I believe that they've sold enough Scorpio units that the production cost of the current runs is really down where they would actually be earning money per sale. I don't know that they've paid that R&D back sufficiently. So I almost think that Microsoft is maybe barely cutting their teeth with a $400 price drop. It may actually still be paying for each console sale. And like I said, it just comes off to me as very arrogant for Sony to say, we're not going to put our PlayStation 4 Pro on sale. It's $400, which now makes it competitive with the Xbox. And so, take your pick. But for you suckers who, need to buy a second PlayStation 4 because yours has died, at this point in the life cycle, or whatever, here's $2 for you. You can buy your $200 PlayStation 4 with Spider-Man in it. Yeah.
So I'll agree with you on the Sony pricing in terms of, but I think it's not only in their games division, but so some of Sony's higher end 4K TVs last year saw a nice discount, like the 900Es. This year's models, the 900Fs, are not seeing a similar discount, at least currently in Black Friday sales. So there are some other up and down the Sony hardware lines that they are probably not discounting. The same thing I've seen with Sony 4K HDR Blu-ray players are not seeing the same type of discounts that I saw last year.
Right.
So whether this is a corporate strategy or corporate arrogance, I'll say that I'm surprised that there's not any PlayStation Pro bundles, right? Like, given the install base of the PS4, that having some type of bundle or discount is a great way to convert early adopters, people that have still their kind of base PlayStation 4s that may want to stay in brand. But not having that, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, what I would really want to be doing if I were Sony right now is, in order to make sure that I have the least amount of friction in whatever my price is going to be for PlayStation 5, I would be wanting to move my user base to 4K TVs now. Like, I don't want that to be a barrier to you buying the PlayStation 5. So let me discount the PlayStation 4 Pro to help you make that move, so that by the time I drop the 5, the conversations are very much the conversation was when the PlayStation 4 Pro released was wailing and gnashing of teeth of making the step up to the 4K TV, right? So I would want to remove that barrier. So I don't really understand why they would just stand toe-to-toe with Xbox One Scorpio. And again, the only reason to do it would be to say, well, we've got better games, and so we don't need to discount. And again, I think that's a very arrogant stance. I will say, what I will give them, maybe if I were to walk that back a little bit, is I will say, now admittedly, Sony is a company that, quite frankly, was on the brink of being disassembled, right, piece by piece. If you kind of go back like 3 years ago and you look at the poor performance of the smartphone division and the need to sell off the PC division and get rid of VAIOs. And quite frankly, the games division was the only one that was financially performing. And in fact, then after the network debacle, the PlayStation Network outage of 2011, I think it was, then they had to fold that division into the games division because it was too much of a liability to allow the one brand that was doing well to be damaged. So another way to look at it might be, look, we don't have confidence in smartphones and TVs and yada yada yada. I think their cameras are selling pretty well. Actually, I happen to be on one of their cameras right now. But there could also be bigger corporate saying, look, keep the prices in PlayStation up because you guys are the ones who are performing well. TVs haven't fully recovered yet, and so we need you guys to carry the flag and clear the profit margins for us potentially. I don't know, Prime, you're one individual who has stood outside the PlayStation ring this generation. What are your thoughts? And are you encouraged by the Xbox One Scorpio discount?
Well, I already have one, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
For me, at least.
All right.
But no, I mean, that's a good. I was just looking too, and they have a lot of bundles too, which is I think they're always good for during the Christmas time, holiday season. Xbox at least. Um, and actually, I've seen a few bundles for Switch, which there's no discounts, but I mean, at least you get like a game or two, mixed in with the console. But it is kind of weird that they're at least not doing that. I mean, I haven't really seen any bundles for Sony other than the Spider-Man one. Just Xbox has the Minecraft one. They have Battlefield 5. They have one with a couple of
Fallout
games.
as well.
Yeah, Fallout.
Yep, there's a Forza Horizon with a combo of 7 in there as well.
Yeah, there's one with Black Ops with the Game Pass for 3 months, and Destiny with all its with additional pack-ins, add-ins, content. So I mean, it's. And I think that one's just like a regular price one. But still, I mean, at least it has 2 extra games that you wouldn't normally have, and they're fairly new. Black Ops is probably the newer one, but I don't know. I guess, like I said, I mean, like you said, I haven't really been following Sony all that much. Usually, when I'm not on a console, I kind of fall off of the news. I'll watch it every now and then, anything major. But and as far as the them not doing I think it's the Xbox experience, or I'm sorry, PlayStation experience that they usually did. I think they had even mentioned that they just wanted to concentrate on this fall and kind of get that going and not kind of worry about what's coming up. So I don't know if that actually means that they don't have anything going on, or if they really are meaning that when they say that. I mean, I don't know.
So part of what at least from corporate PR pieces, the terms of not doing the PlayStation experience, they also said that they were putting more emphasis on Paris Games Week and moving some of the announcements there, which was earlier in the year. So I think there was a conscious shift towards some of that. So the other piece I want to come back to you, Agastocles, on in terms of the bundles, right, is and the pricing. I don't think that we're even going to see pro pricing that was $50 off, which it was last Black Friday. But I think the one, and this is the interesting piece from a kind of a corporate strategy, is that I think by not having all these bundles, the one thing that Sony is highlighting this holiday season in terms of hardware is the PSVR, right? So you can pick up a PSVR with 2 games for $200. So I think they are not trying to, potentially, they are either trying to blow out stock in their PSVR, or they're trying to leverage that to see what's that market level, what's that price point in terms of its price sensitivity for adoption,
Yeah.
as they think about what the PS5 is.
So what I'll say is I'll give them kudos for not abandoning a thing that they've put out, like as they did with the PlayStation Vita, which I still to this day can't understand, and like they did with the PlayStation Move. So good on them for that. However, I will say VR, really? My VR set has been in this bag for months, not doing anything. Right? Not now. Granted, it's not PlayStation VR. This is my Windows VR set, but I'm like, it's just again. I mean, let's not open up the Agasicles can of like the VR rant, right? It's just it's not happening, right? It's not like the media keeps trying to make it happen. Maybe Sony's not trying to make it happen. It's a thing, but the fidelity isn't there. The games aren't there. The locomotion's not there. People people don't have the room. I mean, to a certain extent, when you talk about certain games, and the engaging content isn't there, and the developer community and the publishers haven't flipped over to where they're putting that stuff there. Now, there was one VR game that we saw at E3. I can't remember the name of it, but this is the one with like the android that gets like you wake up on a planet and then like you've got to make your way across the entire planet, and that looked like a Destiny level first person shooter in VR. But I guess I don't know. I guess my take is until you can render that kind of experience, like stop wasting my time.
So I think there's more VR talk to come,
Yeah.
right? And I think we certainly are going to have some interesting pieces about that in terms of what is functional there. But I think what I do want to come back to is all the rest of the announcements. So we have hammered on Sony's corporate strategy and our disappointment and surprises with some of the releases with holiday Black Friday leaks. So one of the first announcements, as Agasicles had said, is the discount there with $100 off the base PlayStation or Xbox One X. If you do a bundle, they are going to be $70 off. So the Battlefield 1 bundles will be $430, and you're seeing that reflected as well. But we've got lots of other news that came out of Mexico City. So I'm going to kind of rapid fire through some of these, and then I'm going to kick it over to you, Osiris Prime, for a couple others. So we've got some small ones here, like Forza Horizon 4. We're getting some more updates, something that they're going to continue to come back to. I think they've shown that with Forza 7 as well, where they just released the Hot Wheels 50th anniversary pack. Sunset Overdrive coming to the PlayStation, coming to the PC. PUBG is coming to Game Pass. PUBG, which was also announced to be coming to PlayStation in the beginning of December, is now going to be free on Game Pass for Game Pass subscribers. And Game Pass itself is also starting to preload titles.
I think we lost DB's audio, or is that just me?
My mic cut out, and I had all kinds of news that you guys lost. So, where did we get to? We get to Sunset Overdrive and PC.
Yeah, Sunset Overdrive. You're talking about PUBG on Game Pass. Then I think you're
PUBG on Game Pass and preloading titles. Game Pass.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So lots of quick fire news, but Osiris Prime, please help me before my mic cuts out again, and I'm going to see if I can address this. So. What else struck you as exciting news from the event?
All right, so there were a few other titles on Game Pass that they had announced: Agents of Mayhem, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. I don't know if that's how you say it. Ori and the Blind Forest.
Senua, I think.
Senua.
Yeah, I will fact check it while you were riffing.
Thank you. Ori and the Blind Forest. That's the newer one, right? I'm assuming that Ori one.
Yeah.
Because the other one's Will of the Wisp or something like that. Okay. Yeah. MXGP3, Thief of Thieves, which I have no idea. It's an interesting title. I don't know what it is. But yeah, I thought there was a lot of speculation beforehand that they were going to have something like massive. And I guess that was supposed to be PUBG, but I was kind of like, okay, it's PUBG. I mean, people who probably have it already have it. I mean, I'm sure it's going to bump the numbers up a little bit, but I mean, nothing really jumped out at me like too crazy for all the games listed here. Then there's a few more that they have. Obviously, Crackdown 3, in the far future, February, which I guess I can talk about now. They finally gave a exact date for Crackdown 3, February 15th, 2019. So that's good. At least they have it locked down. And they also showed off the Wrecking Zone mode, which is their destructible arena environment mode, where you can just destroy look like pretty much anything in the arena. It's kind of look like this skyscraper esque battle arena that you can run around in and blow up everything. So it looked pretty cool. I saw some of the video.
Yeah, that seems to be the pitch of it, right? Is that it's the only all destructible environment mode within the game. And again, is Microsoft, and it's going to be running on Azure Cloud services there for some of that as well.
Yeah, so that looks pretty cool. That was pretty much all I saw. I think that's all they showed for Crackdown 3, and I think they had like another little um, trailer with Terry Crews, I believe. I don't know if they showed any gameplay. I didn't, unfortunately, get a chance to see that trailer or little clip of what it was, but he had another little thing going on there. But I'm still excited for Crackdown 3. I mean, I loved the first one, like I said before. Second one was fine. It was all right for what it was, I guess. But this looks like it's going, back to its roots. And I still see a lot of people online kind of dogging it on the graphics. And they saying it doesn't look up to snuff to what they think it should be. But I mean, I don't know. I think it looks fine. It's always had that cell shaded look, which I mean, I don't know how good you can really how obviously it's not going to be realistic when you're doing that kind of graphic quality. So I don't know. It looks fine to me. I'm still excited for it. So we'll see what happens. And then I think that was it for the announcements for Game Pass. There's some other small
I think so, right? We get some smaller ones like Crackdown, the original, coming. It's free now for the rest of the month.
Yep.
Right. We get some.
Thomas Was Alone, which I think was kind of a big one that came out not too long ago for everything else.
Yeah, and then we get some backwards compatibility things with the Final Fantasy 13 suite coming backwards compatible, along with the announcements that the rest of kind of those remasters that are also coming to Switch with Final Fantasy 12 and 10 are coming to Xbox at some point in time in the Square Enix far-flung future of whenever they feel like it calendar. That is coming there as well. So along the RPG front, we also had two other announcements from Microsoft in terms of their pickups, right? That they picked up studio pickups in terms of picking up Obsidian and also of picking up the developer of Wasteland. Again, another RPG. That maker is In Exile Entertainment. So Brian Fargo's studio from the original Fallout series. His studio that is the makers of Wasteland and a couple other kind of traditional CRPGs that is coming there as well. So again, they're rounding out their third party or now first party studios. So any thoughts, Agasicles, on either of these two studio pickups? Right, the Obsidian was kind of rumored for a while, but now it is official.
Can I ask one thing before
Please do.
jumps in? Obsidian, were they the ones that did Fallout New Vegas?
So Obsidian did Fallout New Vegas. They did Alpha Protocol. They did the Stick of Truth. They did.
I didn't know that.
Knights of the Old Republic 2. They did most recently Pillars of Eternity. Previously they had done a lot of taking somebody's engine and adding a really interesting story into it.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Guess, please. Any thoughts there?
No, it was a nice get, right? And Obsidian has a long history and lineage, founded by Firkus Ukrahart. A lot of people who worked at Black Isle, which is how I know them. So you called it a lot of, I guess, what I would say is more modern age stuff. I know them from like Icewind Dale, Planescape Tournament, those type of things. Neverwinter Nights. Baldur's Gate, working in those Baldur's Gate engines, and that's why I kind of jumped for joy when I heard that they were coming aboard Microsoft Studios. I would love to get like an old school style, isometric 3/4 view dungeon crawling RPG built in that Baldur's Gate style. That's like one of the few like really large games. Not so much Baldur's Gate 2, but Icewind Dale and Icewind Dale 2, I actually co-opted all the way through, beginning to end with a buddy of mine, which is a rare experience for me. So, and they also worked on Dungeon Siege 3, which I didn't go back to that franchise by the third one, but I was a huge Dungeon Siege fan. Still am. Um, and not and a bit so also for Dungeon Siege 2. So it's a nice get. And one of the few things that I feel like justifies giving grubby console gamers access to keyboard and mouse.
There it is. I was waiting for that.
That was a nice transition. See, I was hoping to get there, so that was great. Thank you very much. So talk about the keyboard and mouse piece, right? This has been something that they announced way back when Halo Wars 2 was announced that it was going to be coming. I can remember 2 states and 1 house ago that this announcement existed. So, right, this has been a while coming, but it's finally here this month.
Didn't they have it like limited support for some games or no? I thought I read that somewhere. I wasn't sure which games though. With keyboard and mouse right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
No, okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah, don't know. But
so,
well, I guess really I'm curious to hear what Prime has to say, right? Because I feel like this will be, and because I haven't heard of any like, well, in competitive multiplayer you won't be able to use keyboard and mouse and like combined lobby. Like I haven't heard anything like that. I've just heard, keyboard and mouse. Now they talk about games that are going to get it, and it doesn't sound like universal, and it sounds like Phil Spencer is saying that developers have or will have control over whether or not they implement them. So I guess it'll be up to a game by game basis. But looking at the games that are getting it right off the bat, Vermintide 2. Is there an Xbox game called War Thunder? It's what PlayStation game am I confusing that with? Warhawk.
Warhawk
Okay.
was a PlayStation 3 game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the only recognizable game, the only game that I even recognize on this list of games that are getting it, that are supposed to get support this month, is Vermintide 2, and then ones that are on the list are DayZ, which I guess DayZ does. I don't know. Does DayZ have competitive multiplayer in it?
It's a survival game. I mean, I don't think it has like a normal like multiplayer.
Okay, and Warface, is that a competitive multiplayer game?
I'm not even sure what that is.
Right.
I thought that was Warframe when I first saw it, but then I double take that. I was like, oh, Warface.
Yeah.
I did read that Warframe is getting it though as well, so it might not be early, but it is. So it is getting it here.
I recognize like maybe three games altogether in that whole list.
Right, exactly. So it's not like apparently like the top games aren't sweating implementing this, but I mean. It's a question of like if it shows up on competitive multiplayer.
Well, there is that one big game I think you forgot to mention.
What's that?
Fortnite is getting it.
Is it? The list I'm looking at doesn't have that in there.
So that was like one of the first ones they had announced, I believe.
Yep, that was kind of their high profile announcement.
Right.
Was Fortnite.
Now, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say my thing was I thought it was kind of weird that they didn't have PUBG on this list at all. I would have figured, that was kind of their go-to game. And there's no mouse support for it yet, keyboard and mouse support. So I don't know. Yeah. It's just me. I thought it was weird.
Well, I mean, having played Fortnite on both PC and console, I don't necessarily know that keyboard and mouse give you a huge. I mean, it may give you advantage in the shooting mechanics, but because that game is so heavily built around the building mechanics, like I haven't felt like building with keyboard and mouse is necessarily advantageous in comparison to a controller. I don't know.
I think high level players would probably disagree with you, but they're probably the ones who are mapping, all kinds of different structures to different keybinds.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But so, gentlemen, we started the show talking about kind of Sony's arrogance, and here is a whole series of announcements, which on its surface is pretty interesting because it gives us a whole lot more than we anticipated to talk about regarding this event. But does any of this move the needle? I mean, these are all like almost like quality of life improvements for people who are already in the infrastructure. Is there anything here that says that is going to bring somebody this holiday season with those deals over to Xbox?
No, I mean, not really. I don't think so. It seems more this is like they're building upon the future. Once again, obviously, they started that with Game Pass, and and these other services that they got going. And I think it's just building on that, and they're just getting ready for the next console basically now, and just trying to add on to it. That's at least that's what I think.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's any one thing that is the winner here in terms of bringing in people, but I think that collectively, there's almost this snowballing momentum inertia aspect to them, right? And Microsoft has been building this from my perspective since they announced backwards compatibility. So they've got this, not only growing library of maybe not greatly growing library of modern games, but the ability to keep coming back to all your former games that you own or you might be able to pick up on the cheap, additional integration, things like Game Pass, things like the enhancements for their 4K for some of their older games. It feels like it is a combination of a package for a value add more than it is any type of, you know, where Microsoft is the place to go if you're trying, or Sony is the place to go if you really want to play God of War or Spider-Man or some of those high prestige profile games. Microsoft has got a whole catalog of reasons why you might want to give them a look this holiday season. Is that a fair way to say it, Agassiz?
Well, yeah, and I think like Prime said, I think it's, I mean, as we've talked about, I think it's much more so about building on the future. You talk about what is Microsoft's play, right? And I think what we're seeing, we've talked about the service stuff before, so I think everybody gets that. But what I find interesting from this set of announcements is now it seems like then, like twisting that knife, bending that, wailing away on that crowbar, and converting this into, this feels like much more of an ecosystem theme, and where they're trying to leverage that value add. And I think from what we saw about cross-platform multiplayer and Microsoft championing the way forward for that, I think what Microsoft is thinking about going into this next generation is that this is not going to be the generation, and it's really kind of been like this for a while. I just don't know that the console manufacturers have admitted it. I think the next generation is much more so going to be the generation of how do things look when I play in multiple places, right? How do things look when I can play anywhere? How do things look if I start to devalue the platform? And I think what they're doing is they're looking at what they have in corporate across the board and figuring out how do I leverage that. In the Sony doesn't really have an ecosystem. They kind of, the nearest they got to it was when they had the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Portable. The Vita didn't capitalize on that. And so today, if you want to get in the Sony camp, what do? You buy a PlayStation 4 and a Sony TV, and we've had a period in history where that didn't even really buy you anything. It actually bought you sometimes less compatibility than just buying a blasted Samsung TV. But you look at these announcements, right? Games Pass is coming to PC, which is huge, right? And this is the breakwater. I was actually about to reach out to another podcast last week because they incorrectly said, well, you get Games Pass on PC, and then like the next day was when when the Games Pass on PC was limited. Then the next day they dropped this. So Games Pass comes to PC. You enable keyboard and mouse support. Now I'm a PC gamer. I take that same hardware and I connect it to my Xbox One, and I can play the same games. And I have Games Pass, so I have access to the same titles on both Xbox and PlayStation and PC. And then it's really just a matter of, it's not that I prefer one platform to the other, it's where my friends are. So I can play, just like DBQ, you and I, on Destiny 2, right? And Swiss to a certain extent, we can play on PlayStation or we can go play on PC. But obviously with Destiny, that divide is broken in terms of the progression, which wasn't a broken contract. That was a known about Destiny from the beginning, so it's not the same thing as some of the other games that have come along. But the point is now those progressions are linked, right? Which is poignant to me as I broke out Gears of War 4 earlier today. Now I go out and I buy Obsidian and In Exile, who are the types of people who make the exact types of games that a PC player would want to play on an Xbox with keyboard and mouse support. Spencer then promises to fix the Windows Store, right? I mean, so you can hear the drum beats, right? I mean, and I think this is kind of what we're winding up to is It's leveraging the power of the PC as a gaming platform, concatenated with enabling more power via services and APIs on the Xbox platform, so that what you do, so that the picture that you see as we're approaching E3 and the announcement of like the Xbox, whatever, I can't even remember what it's called, right? I'm pretty sure you're going to see the panoramic Scarlet. You're going to see the panoramic view, like letterboxed image of the whole spectrum of gaming from low power to high power, right? You're not going to see a picture of an Xbox. You're going to see the whole panoply, and you're going to see, low end Scarlet, medium range Scarlet. You're going to see Scorpio in that picture too, because it's still going to be present, and it's still going to have access to the same stuff. And then you're going to see on the far right end, you're going to see a PC.
And you haven't even thrown in their streaming service, right? Then you get in their announcement from last month with Infinity. And now not only are you playing those games on your PC or your Xbox, but you're also then playing them on your tablet or your phone or, on your business trip without having to pack up your console, right? I mean, I think that all of those things go into that drumbeat that you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because right before we had started, I got on a little bit early, and I was like, I'm gonna play something. I don't have really have anything on my PC, so I'm gonna stream from my Xbox to my PC. That's what I was doing. I was playing. Well, I was gonna try to play Blackout, but Call of Duty Blackout, but update of 11 gigs, so I couldn't do that. So I played a little bit of Rocket League, and then I played a game of PUBG. It was the first time I played that since Blackout came out. But and it was working fine. I didn't have any problems. There was no delays. There was nothing going on. So yeah, I mean, I think and with Assassin's Creed going through Chrome, I think that's we're gonna start seeing that streaming, the game streaming kind of come up, and not just from the internet, but maybe from your different devices, and like you mentioned, I guess, Cleese, you want to go where your friends are, but you also want to game where you are in your house. So I was here on my PC, I just happened to be here because we had the podcast. So I was like, I'll jump on Xbox, and maybe I won't have to do that in the future. I won't have to stream from the Xbox to the PC. I'll have the Game Pass, so I could just pop in a game and stream that like that, like AC through Chrome or something like that, whatever games happens to be on there at the time. So it's they're just looking forward, and I think that's all they can do right now, because I mean, obviously they're done with this generation. They can't beat Sony right now, I don't think so. They're just trying to look for toward the future right now.
But I think that syncing it has the potential to be huge, right? And I say that as somebody who last month played Forza Horizon 4 on an X, on an original Xbox One, and on PC. And across all of those, I would boot it up and give it 10 seconds to sync my account, and I'd be right back to where I was playing with everything unlocked and the same amount of credits and cars. And I could pick that up. I was in 3 different rooms of my house, and I could keep playing the same game from the same spot. And so I think there's a lot of benefit in that moving forward. And I don't know that. I think you're right, I guess. I don't know that Sony has an answer, let alone even thinks that that's the direction they want to go. That they've got Gaikai with PlayStation Now, but whether or not that's robust enough to do this type of Microsoft approach, whether they have the infrastructure, or if they are going to lean in the other direction, in the Nintendo direction of being invested in that name brand, in that platform, which I think is, you know, is potentially the direction they go, and it may be to their detriment.
I guess the one thing with Sony that I guess I see is, you mentioned Gaikai. They brought that out fairly early on in the console cycle, and it kind of fell. Well, I wouldn't say it fell off, but I mean it's still around. I'm assuming.
No, right? It came out in PlayStation 3 cycle. It was last generation when they did that.
Yeah, I don't really hear about it anymore. And once again, I guess Cleese mentioned the portable. I can't remember what it's called now.
The Vita.
The Vita. They brought out that, and they kind of just let it go. It's like they don't stick with something and keep going with it. They kind of just like let it, die off and die. Now, obviously, Microsoft's done that too with like Kinect and some other things. Even if, well, I don't want to say HoloLens because that never even really came out, but they've had their share too. But it doesn't seem like as much as Sony has in these past few years. even decade, I guess, I suppose. Since I didn't even realize Gaikai came out, back on the PS3. So
Well, right in the story of PlayStation Now, unfortunately, is that it was nowhere nearly as price competitive as Games Pass is, with all the discounts and freebies and $1 and all this kind of crazy stuff. It doesn't have the gearing that Xbox Game Pass does in terms of all first. I don't think it does. I don't think it's necessary that all first party titles debut day and date as they do on Game Pass. And the big problem, although they've now gotten over it, but I think it still leaves a bad taste in people's mouth, is you couldn't download the games locally to the console, so they were all streamed and you were bandwidth limited, and like again, unless you're on FiOS, like I don't even understand how when you talk about being in a household where once kids are a certain age, they have their own devices and they're streaming video, and then your wife is streaming video, and you're trying to play games. Like I don't even know what that looks like. If you don't have a FiOS pipe, unless it's you wait till everybody goes to bed, and when you have all the bandwidth to yourself, right? And then that's when you do that stuff. Yeah, right.
Well, I mean this is the Chrome streaming experience from the past month in terms of I've had that where I've been playing Assassin's Creed streaming, and I've got another son streaming something else, and a wife watching streaming TV, and having a perfectly stable gameplay experience, but getting a low collection or low connection warning. But again, I'm playing a game that doesn't necessarily need that type of Twitch aspect. So I'm gonna swap us here because we're running out of time. So I'm gonna stick with that theme of Xbox, kind of looking forward to kind of the service and the cloud, and being able to play on a variety of things, and Sony really leveraging kind of the mind share of their console. And so this past week, we got 2 weeks ago, we got the announcement of the rest of the lineup for PlayStation Classic, right? This is the retro throwback plug and play device that looks like a tiny little PlayStation original. But we also got news this week that it's running an emulator. Is that correct, Prime? What was the news story related to PlayStation Classic, that it's using an open source emulator?
I'm not sure actually. I think maybe a guess. Please, this was a guess.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought, well, maybe this was Swiss's story. But anyhow, yes, that is the story. Guess what? I jumped the lead. Yes, it is running an open source emulator. So similar to what modders were able to do with the Nintendo NES Classic and SNES Classic, the ability, since this is just going to be running an open source emulator, chances are this is going to be able to be hacked and added on a lot of other games onto it once it finally releases here in early December. But so I wonder, and this is going to bring us back around kind of full circle on this podcast, is so Sony doesn't have a big piece of hardware, right? Maybe that is their VR set for this holiday season, but maybe their piece of hardware that they're pushing people toward is that $100 Classic, because as we've talked about here before, it's not necessarily about having them, as they're positioning themselves for the next generation. It's not about getting people invested in the infrastructure of their network. It is getting people invested in that name brand and the Apple mentality that goes along with it. So that's my take on it. But I'm going to look at Agassicles because he's saying, that ain't right. So talk to me about that. Is that a way to read this, or am I out of left field here? And whether or not that's the correct approach is a whole separate question.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. Like the whole release of the PlayStation Classic to me is really strange. It doesn't marry up to like the sense that it made for Nintendo when they had the Wii U on the market. Switch was coming the following spring. How do you drum up and reinvigorate interest in your platform, which has been lagging, right? You drop the Classic, right? You get everybody in a hot lather to try and obtain this thing. It has all these classic games that people remember, and then even if you can't get it, right? If you get it, you get that nostalgia, and you're like, oh heck yeah, I'm definitely pre-ordering the Switch, right? If you can't get it, then you do the same thing. You go, oh man, I really missed out. I forget how much I really love Nintendo. Like, I'm gonna trust them despite what the Wii U did, and I'm gonna pre-order the Switch. Like Sony doesn't have any need for that. To me this would have made sense like a year from now, as they were trying to position, if you were losing like interest in PlayStation 4, but that's not where they are right now. They're the darlings as far as the champions of first party exclusive content. So I don't know why they needed the Classic. I don't know why anybody would buy the Classic. Um, the other thing is they could do what Microsoft has done and put all these things on PlayStation Now, which would be a better answer. So it feels a little money grubbing again, in putting this thing in a piece of hardware that now, and if you're a certain type of gamer, right, you have the PlayStation 4, your PlayStation 3 is still out, right, because there's games that you can't get right through without ponying up and paying the money for PlayStation Now. So my PlayStation 3 is still out because I would rather do that than pay money. And then now I'm gonna buy another thing and put it somewhere right in my man cave or whatever. Like, but then on top of all that, like to then do this slipshod GarageBand level job of using an open source emulator instead of like writing your own code and putting some special sauce in it, right? Let's maybe not let's I guess what frustrates me a little bit, and it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out, right? The huge problem with emulators constantly is that many of them tend to not look well on modern TVs, right? Like the game was made for like a 360p display CRT, and when emulators are made, they don't necessarily put any special sauce in there to make the game look better on a modern 1080p TV. We talk about the Switch, and as I've said, like Switch doesn't even look good on a 4K TV. Like I moved it back to a 1080p. So what is the Classic gonna look like? Um, I don't know. So I mean, you guys saw my tweet. You saw what I mentioned, and I personally think if like if I were a Sony engineer, and again I say this, looking on the outside, because of course if I were getting a paycheck, maybe I would think differently. Um, but like but I know how I am at my current job, and I know like when somebody suggests that we do something like cheap and ridiculous and low quality, I definitely raise my hand and say, um, maybe that's not something that we do, and maybe if you want to do that, maybe I go find a different project to work on, because I don't have any time for that trash. Like that doesn't do anything, right? So again, I feel badly for anybody who worked on that and had to implement that thing. Um, and I guess I would love to have somebody on the podcast who paid money for it, so that we could pick your brain as to why you felt that was a good value add position.
So I'm gonna, as an owner of the NES Classic and SNES Classic, I will say that probably the majority of pickups for it will be nostalgia related. That somebody wants that experience, wants to hold that controller back in their hands, right? That they could play that emulation on anything else, but maybe there's something else about being able to sit down in front of a TV and do that for a certain generation of people. And I think that is probably the market. But we will see what the sales look like. So I think we've come around pretty full circle here, gentlemen. This is a podcast where we were up on Microsoft and their momentum building, and we had some real concerns about the direction of PlayStation, and you know uh, has been ups and downs, and it's been good. It's been good to talk about. I think there are some questions as we come into next year about, for both of these consoles, right? That how much of Sony's dominance in this generation is going to lead them to overstep or overplay their hand as the next announcements start coming out in E3 time, or how much is Microsoft's kind of scrappiness and kind of uh, determination to make this cloud-based platforming and infrastructure successful, how much of that is finally going to come to fruition when they started this console generation, saying this is the disk-based, diskless generation. And so, I think not only has this podcast come around full circle, but in some ways Microsoft and their messaging is coming around. It's just that the audience is maybe hearing it a little different in 2018 than they were in 13 and 14. So, or 12 actually, if we go all the way back there. So, anyhow, gentlemen, any final thoughts before we wrap up, either on any other news for the week or in Microsoft's Mexico City announcements? All right. So again, we've got a host of shows always coming at you from the E2KG network. We've got multiple venues and speakers and perspectives, regardless of whether it is games or comics, as we started talking about West Coast Avengers here, and streaming media and video and movies. E2KG Network is your home for a variety of entertainment discussion, analysis, and in-depth engagement. So I hope you continue to enjoy us, and continue to join us along the way as well. So for myself, Osiris Prime and Agasicles Stamos, this has been enough to keep going on the E2KG network. And until next time, we'll always be enough to keep you going. Good night.